Hello, everybody. Last time I tried that lecture on the apology standing up, and I noticed that I was fidgeting around a bit, so I figured I'd start sitting down this time and see if that's any better. So today I want to give a brief lecture on the Platonic dialogue, the Crito. In the Crito, the primary question is whether it's ever okay to violate a law, even if that law is unjust. And Socrates makes a very interesting argument at the end of the Crito. Basically, Socrates argues that we always have an obligation to follow the law no matter what. Even if that law is unjust, we still owe it not just to our society, but we actually owe it to ourselves to follow the law. And the way he makes this argument is he goes through a couple step process. First off, he investigates how he became the person that he was. And he says, look, in order for me to become the person that I am, in order for me to become Socrates, it was necessary that I grow up in Athens. Athens provided the education that helped make me who I am. It provided the cultural norms. It provided the political stability. It provided the relationships, the other people, the opportunities. In essence, what Socrates is doing is developing an idea that our society and the world around us helps to shape us into who we are. So, in order for him to be the person that he is, he needed to have grown up in Athens. What this means is that in order for Socrates to be Socrates, he required some kind of a state, some kind of a government. Because in order to have the Athenian society that he lived in, that society needed to be governed by laws. And in order to have laws, you need to have a state that people respect and laws that people are willing to follow. The next step is he says, look, in order for laws to work, laws have to be requirements. Laws can't be voluntary. So the idea is a law doesn't work as a law if it gets to be your choice whether or not you want to follow it. The whole idea of, say, saying that stealing is illegal is that that applies to everybody. You can't just say, well, I decide that I don't like that law, so I'm not going to follow it. So when you put this together, what we see is that Socrates is basically arguing in order for him to become the person that he is, Athens needs to exist. In order for Athens as the society to be there, laws need to be present. In order for laws to work, they can't just be up to people's own opinion. People need to follow them. So what would Socrates be doing if he broke the law in this case? Well, if Socrates broke the law, he would basically be saying laws are up to the individual. I get to choose whether or not I want to follow the law. If we take those consequences all the way out, he argues, if everybody decided whether or not they wanted to follow the law, there couldn't be laws. If there couldn't be laws, there couldn't be a state, there couldn't be a government. If there couldn't be a government, there couldn't be Athens. And if there couldn't be Athens, there couldn't be Socrates. Socrates was produced by his society. So the idea is laws are necessary for people like Socrates to be able to exist. Therefore, Socrates actually argues that he owes it to himself to follow the law. Even if in this case the law is going to unjustly put him to death, he still has an obligation to himself to respect it, and therefore he tells Crito, look, I'm not going to flee with you. So it's interesting because you could compare this to a thinker like Henry David Thoreau, who writes the essay on civil disobedience, and there he argues we have an obligation to remain true to our conscience. No matter what, we have an obligation to do what we believe is right, even if that means violating the law. But Socrates argues we always have an obligation to follow the law, no matter what, even if that law is unjust.